Hey, you boy, come here. I'm gonna need them piggly-wigglys from you, you son of a gun. Either way, welcome back, everybody. Sorry for that slightly disturbing introduction, but honestly, all you kind of deserve at this point in time, the state of the world right now, you know what? Thanks, Obama. Either way, welcome back. Today, we're talking about ourselves a nice, lovely update, Crossout 13.90 Steel Championship. Who doesn't love playing soccer, said absolutely nobody, except for the entirety of Brazil and the entirety of Europe, for whatever reason. Either way, we have another one of those updates yet again. If you didn't know what Steel Championship is, well, go watch my previous, 15 videos where I talked about the Steel Championship updates from years before. And congratulations, it's pretty much exactly the same. However, there has been a slight change to this format here. So instead of the actual spike being put on here, which is a single action crossbow bolt here, it's actually being changed now to the Ripper discs, which is that thing that actually shoots out 2 or so discs and that stick it to the ground. So those are actually used as like the impulse mechanism instead of the single shot spike. So slightly different, but I guess it changes it up a little bit now that you have a bit more options to actually fire at a distance. But beyond that, it's still a 3v3 format where you try to kick a ball into the enemy player's nets, and you have the ability to drag around on a Skinner that breaks pretty easily. So, la-di-da, it is here once again for all of you lovely soccer fans. And with that, they also have a nice lovely theme here. Let's take a listen. Wow, that absolutely destroys my ears. I think we're going to stop that now. Ow. Beyond that, too, when it comes to the vehicles itself, they've actually been changed to actually be somewhat more stable, so that's really great. One of the main issues I feel with the previous vehicles is that their maneuverability was not necessarily ideal. When it comes to a lot of these games where reaction time, movement, and patterns and all that is really going to be top-notch priority, having a vehicle that really isn't the absolute bee's knees is kind of a big detriment. Feel is 100% what these modes are about, so getting that thing right, important. Beyond that too, they seem to be kind of experimenting now with these kind of miniature seasons. Previously, there was a miniature season associated with, I can't even remember that event for the life of me to figure it out, but there was previous mini seasons before to go along with these limited time events, and now they have one here for the brand new Steel Championship. So for base rewards, you get things like badges, stickers, work pieces, workbench coupons, experiences for the big chase season, which is kind of nice. So you have one season tying into the other season for free, and then as well containers with resources. So generally with that nice little bit of EXP for the previous season or the current season you're doing right now, actually is kind of nice. I can actually see that being a really scalable thing too, where every sort of little reward or season or little event that comes out, if they also give experience to the current season or a generic season EXP pool in total, I feel like that could be a really big benefit. And there's also now the aspect where they're now starting to monetize this. Gone is the day of totally free seasons. Now we get ones where you get the extra little bit of cash, and now you can get the items. So, for example, you can actually get things like the unique Chan Chu CK for the Harpoon Skinner. So if you don't know what that is, this is this little guy right here. Looks like the nice chodiest of toads. But you can see that in general we have a nice selection of 45 levels within this season, which is absolutely ridiculous. It's almost the size of these mini seasons that they were having previously. And you also have things like these military reserve crates that give you a nice lovely resources. Kind of jazzy. You also have extra paints, more items for decorations and epic parts here. So realistically, it's like a traditional season, except that rewards are primarily going to be based around actually playing the Steel Championship. So there's a bit more of an incentive to actually play the Steel Championship. That is, if you're big into things like these. But at the same time, if you really don't care for a lot of these rewards, then you're not really going to be missing out on too much. None of these things are really quote-unquote impactful. They're mostly a cosmetic or resource season, which honestly, for me, is actually something that I heavily appreciate. I really love seeing cars and vehicles and all of this that is not actually bound to actual functional elements here. Nothing in here is an actual weapon, is an actual cabin, is an actual armor piece. All of them are cosmetics, coins, stickers, paints, badges, things that you can already attain in-game fairly easily, and by themselves do not pose any sort of quote-unquote advantage, at least in the player's eyes. So in this way, I can find this to actually be the optimal season Now, it's a bit weird that it's more or less like an optionary second season on top of our already existing seasons. Why we're doing 2 seasons at once is beyond me, but you know what? Do your thing, boo-boom. But overall, yeah, I think it's a nice addition. It's nothing where it's like actually mandatory and would force you to actually feel like, ah, yes, I must participate in this. Ah, yes, I must do this. It's more like, you can if you want, really. If you're big into soccer, congratulations. Now you got something that actually rewards you here, considering that the actual base mode, the Steel Championship mode, is not something that's actually very profitable to grind because it's not the ideal grind, even the stretch of the imagination. Beyond that, here's the actual leagues and rewards. Go ahead, pause it, read it at your own leisure, because realistically, if you know how the leagues already work in Crossout, pretty much going to be the exact same thing. However, in terms of league rewards here, we actually do have a few here, mostly being these actual trophies that can actually be stationed around. I am not sure where. My guess is these can actually be placed in your garage, if I had to guess. But it does look decently nice if you're into the sort of like collecting stuff here. You also get the Champions chest here in the Legend category, which is very limited, but you actually get a legendary cabin or weapon of your choice, as long as it's one of these ones here that are actually fairly good. I imagine you can't trade it though. Yep, can't trade it, so doesn't inflate the auction house, but hey, at least you get a free legendary there. Assuming you get all the way to the tippy top of the limited spots here, so we'll see how that turns out. Beyond that, they also gave ourselves a brand new sort of like seasonal pack to celebrate the Salka season. They usually had, there was one that had like the Cucaracha horde for the longest time. Absolute most annoying thing out on the field. But now, they changed it. We got some kind of Jason Schwung looking dude here. Alright, let's take a look at you. What do we got in the shop for this old duderino? Is it even listed in the auction place? Interesting. So with the Steel Championship here, it appears that not only is it the Battle Pass, but it's a Battle Pass with a card design that actually comes with these, unique blueprints here. Downside, I don't think there's actually really any sort of quote-unquote unique elements besides the Decoy Flare Chai Energy, or Kai Energy, and then the unique horn, the Shaolin, and a unique paint can Blue Dragon and Red Dragon, unique background and logo, and a really high parts limit of 71, which is actually near level 30. So for $10, that's actually, that's a fairly decent pack. Let's take a look at this brand new little torch icon. Not bad. Basically just the same one, except now they tainted it green. Pretty nice. Pretty dang nice. Beyond that, you can take a look at the paint itself here. It does actually look pretty dang jazzy, if I do say so. Definitely gives me that, like, 80s Hong Kong vibe for whatever reason. Like, I feel like Jackie Chan's gonna come bursting out the walls and kick the crap out of me. Okay. Not bad looking. And the fact that it comes included with the Battle Pass is actually kind of nice. So that means even if you don't get around to actually utilizing the Battle Pass, hey, you guys got something at least. And the nice thing is, too, it's $10 instead of being $10 of cross crowns or whatever else it's supposed to be. So that's nice of it. They haven't gone down that route yet. Beyond that, they actually managed to actually change how you actually get towards this building section. Now, previously, there used to be unique resources associated with it, but now it looks like they've gone down the route of making it so it costs things like common resources that you already have in abundance, and then just making it cost variations of that if you actually want to get up there into these higher ranks. And these things are also now available to purchase and buy, which, why these things start off at 200 coins a piece, I don't know, considering that the price to actually craft them is exceedingly cheap. But that's kind of interesting as to why these things are so ungodly expensive. Okay, and that one's only 80 bucks. This one's 643. Interesting. I wonder if the price corridor of this could even be lowered. Insufficient items or they are blocked. That's funny. Well, I do not have that to begin with. Interesting. So I wonder if these new ones... Look at that. This block right here costs 1,000 a piece, and there hasn't been a single sale since it's been launched. Okay. So I'm kind of curious as to why these things are so outrageously expensive. Because these things are being sold in abundance, nice and clearly, but the crafted item itself, is somehow being sold for only 1,200. Interesting. This is probably going to be a quirk of the price corridors again, because the thing is, price corridors allow, or rather I shouldn't say allow, but they prevent things like market manipulation on rapidly fluctuating resources, and this is probably going to be one of the areas where it's going to be, rearing its ugly head. It can't really adjust for things like this that are brand spanking new. There's not a lot of volume of trading being done, and there isn't any price history to go by, so people just throw it on there for maximum price, and wow, now you have a item that's worth realistically 50 cents, but can only be sold for 1.2 thousand coins. What? What? But yep, there you go. That's how you start and actually build your new building items. If you want to actually, design your garage more, which honestly, I think it's a great system for the most part. Fairly simple, fairly straightforward, and quite cheap. So if you want to decorate your garage, congratulations, now it became a whole lot cheaper. Beyond that, we also have the Desert Valley map updated here. And honestly, to be fair with you guys, to keep it real, keep it 100%. No cap, I don't know cap, I have no idea. I don't even know this lingo anymore. They actually, I have no idea what this map looked like previously. But honestly, it looks quite jazzy right now itself. They actually give you a nice little slider here to show you before and after. And honestly, I do like the new higher contrast map, because with this map, a lot of the rock features that you see here in the center are super, super hard to see. But now with this, it's like, okay, clear. Yes, now, okay. Now I can see what's going on. This is there, this is there, this is there. Because this was light on light, this is now dark on light, so a lot more visible. And as to the actual changes itself, it looks like they cut off a corridor here to actually go around in the backdrop and force you to go more towards the center. But then they actually kept this one a little bit more pushed in on this side as well. Yep, nope, this map actually brings back what it was, because I remember this section right here. Yeah, this is kind of nice, because honestly, realistically, this section wasn't used terribly a bunch. Everyone used to just go down center anyway and kind of dogpile it. So I wonder how that's going to change. And realistically, I don't think they actually changed it much, because I think this overhead element was just made opaque as opposed to transparent. The other thing they really did is that they shoved this side in as much, which honestly, a lot of people didn't use that area, so maybe that's why they wanted to change it up just a smidgen. It does look quite nice though, and it is a decent change overall. But let's see any more specific elements that we got here. It looks like now we got slightly more opened up point here that isn't as broad and daylight open. This would be like sort of like the back of the map. But now there's actually like a hiding point on it. Honestly, the design philosophy for a lot of these maps honestly seems to be similar in that regard, but that's what it looks like nowadays. That's what it did previously, and brand spanking new. Kind of same map design here. Open space and first off, and now they actually have some hidey holes here, which, yeah, sure, why not, if that's what you're going for. Now, instead of having these little elevated shooting platform area, it looks like it has now one hiding spot and a way to actually come around and sneak around. So a little bit less of a vantage point here that you can prop yourself on top of, and less actually usable for hovers, which is kind of nice. So do kind of like that here. Beyond that, this is what the old section was around that like graveyard area with the super sleepy sland, and now a bit more open, a lot less hazards here to actually get stuck on. Because honestly, this place was a death trap for any car that didn't know how to drive, because you would easily get stuck here and easily get pinned. Now, a lot less likely. Probably the same thing here, a little open out with a few obstructions, and now you got three major ones, and the vehicles look like they're still relatively in the same place, so not too much of a change here, although now you can't actually go through them. It looks like they're just solid objects, which, not as much of a fan. I do kind of like the fact there was like little secret tunnels you could go through if you were small enough, and now you can't do that. Meh. Beyond that, the ledge here on the old side, are you going to work for me? No, alright, I guess we're not taking a look here today. Oh, no, okay, well here we go. Previous little corner bend here has now been opened up and widened, it looks a little bit more space to actually wiggle around, which I guess could be opening up for a bit more of a combat scenario here instead of being poking, so nice and nice. Beyond that, now we go into the actual parts section, and Jesus, that is a lot of changes to parts. I don't... either way, radars. Looks like we got the Ruby, Listener, and the Keen, so these are the lower end ones. They improved the physical model of these, whatever the devil that means. So let's take a look at these lovely radars here. And honestly, these pretty much look exactly the same to me. Yep, these pretty much look the same to me. and this update was already pushed through? Interesting, but alright, cool. If that's what these guys are trying to go for, why not? Improve the physical models, even though they look exactly the same. Okay. Maybe they mean, like, in terms of, like, meshing and how it actually interacts with vehicles. Maybe that's how they meant it. Beyond that, infuse the physical model of all wheels. Now they are narrower and better correspond to their visual models, which is kind of nice. They always seem to be a bit larger than what they were. I always thought that was just because of the, like, turning of them, but maybe that's something else different. Okay. Beyond that, the ram collision damage has been reduced by 2x, which is kind of interesting. Was overly effective weapon at 4 to 6k power score. Don't really play around that much at that power score, but generally I feel like people who are still utilizing melee weapons at that power score, it's still really hard to do that effectively, especially with any sort of team with coordination or any sort of slowdown effect, but okay, not bad. Next we have the special pot, the median damage increased by 13%, durability has been increased, minimum spread in motion has been reduced by 33%, and the maximum spread in motion reduced by 20%. So, interesting. It looks like basically overall, it just got a huge buff overall entirely, which kind of makes sense. My guess is the median itself was, it was kind of crappy to be honest. And if y'all don't know what the median is, this bad boy right here, small caliber cannon, whatever you like to call it here. But essentially, it was like a one-shot with no ammunition, and it did a decent amount of explosion damage and stripped off armor and weapons pretty well. Downside, it wasn't very good at that job. Very rarely did I ever see this being used. So I wonder if this actual huge buff will actually get its a little bit up there. Probably not, but who knows. Next, the discharge of the launch will now boost reloading by 15% instead of 10% earlier, so not too bad. Compared to the flywheel, the discharger was used way less often, so maybe that actually might make sense to actually get it up now. So if you don't know, this is the discharger, and this is the flywheel here. So it's 1 point for 20%, and it's 1 point for 15 in this regard. But my guess is this one was probably not used very often because of its high power score requirement, and the fact that realistically getting 10% reload bonus is not terribly feeling effective, but 20% you could definitely feel. Beyond that, we got the Goliath here, the big old tracks. Their maximum speed has been increased by 10 kilometers an hour to 55. Dang, son. Now those crawling tanks are going to freaking run you over. Ooh. And I'm actually curious. It looks like all the tanks have pretty much gotten their speed increased, but the other two only by 5 kilometers an hour as opposed to 10 with the Goliath tracks. Although, does that mean the Eagle engine still gives you that extra yield 10 kilometers an hour to tank tracks? Let me take a look here. Yep, still. Wow, okay. So the Goliath tracks, you can actually start going pretty dang fast in those bad boys. I mean, even some pretty heavy tire builds don't go that fast because of just their weight limit distribution. So it'll be interesting to see how that'll work out, especially with the fact that you can get up to 65 kilometers an hour with Goliath track. That is insanely fast, dude. Man. Gonna crush our toes with that. Beyond that, looks like we got the ML200s here. As a result of fixing the bug with shooting through the bottom of the mechanical legs, legs have also become more resistant to enemy attempts to drive underneath them. Very nice. That's one of the big things with ML200s that made them basically, I don't want to say useless, but essentially when you got rammed by anybody, your car would be unable to do anything. It's just like, yep, my car is completely lifted off the ground, and like this 5-ton car is somehow not being crushed. Like, it'd be awesome if there was an option to like let your legs lose power and just crush the vehicle underneath. That would be cool with these. Next we have the flywheel here. It looks like they reduced the mass by, it looks like 80-ish kilograms, and it increased its power score by a couple hundred too here, so nice, nice. So basically trying to make it more like a heavier version of the discharger by making it actually just straight up, more power score intensive here. And generally, power score is going to be the easiest way to differentiate, because anyone's just trying to min max power score, it's really going to be a big concern. Next, the Astrius. The weapon now deals 40 damage to mounted parts when firing with overload instead of 50 earlier, and now the overload now deals 60% more damage instead of 50% earlier. So, interesting. Now, in this case, I guess you're going to be able to use this perk more for a bit more oomph. Because probably the weapon was just fine without it. My guess is it's way too good just as a base weapon, without really any of the fancy jazzy stuff with it. So for those that don't know, it is this level dealer weapon here that deals damage to itself while you overcharge it to actually deal more damage, which kind of interesting little weapon category. I feel like self-damage is not really going to be a thing people are going to utilize a bunch, but maybe with the Master Cabin you might be able to convince yourself. Who knows? Beyond that, the Varun here looks like it got a whole sweeping buffs here. Damage up 23%, damage from perk is now 10 instead of 20, so more consistent. Projectile speed increased a bunch. The flight bonus from the perk now is 15% of 35, so again, less overall skill required and more consistent damage. And the projectile impact increased by 60%, so much lesser chance, or higher chance of flipping over cars, I should say. The impulse from the perk is now up 20% instead of 50. So again, a lot more consistent. You'll be able to utilize this more without your perk activating. Because probably previously, I mean, having to rely exclusively on a perk can be alright if that perk is easy to hit off. If it's hard to hit off, then not really ideal. And the time required to fire a shot after the charge to receive the perk bonus is now 1 second instead of the 0.75 seconds earlier, which kind of makes sense because that crossbow was having a really hard time activating its perk and being useful outside of that perk window, because you saw when I was doing those damage numbers on the target within the garage, the numbers this thing was pumping out was just abysmal. But alright, not too bad. Turning the tides here. Next, looks like the wheel here has had its power score reduced by 100 and its mass reduced considerably here to make it a bit more in line with other ones, so not too bad. Considering that a lot of these lower quality wheels tend not to be used anyway, I can kind of understand it. For me, honestly, the quintessential good low tier wheel still has to be the large wheel. Sure, has a lot of power requirements, but dang son, is it good. Beyond that, the trombone heating from a single rocket reduced from 45 to 30%, and the exploding radius is increased by 25. So still, you don't heat up as much when you hit, but you'll be able to hit a lot more frequently, so kind of nice. And again, overheating is still, I mean, 45% in a shot, especially if it's easy to hit, not ideal. I mean, heating itself is incredibly effective. If you get heated up there, I mean, you basically lose every engagement 9 out of 10 times, unless the other person is just, like, not doing their job at all. Beyond that, explosive damage dealt is increased by 29% for the Miller, with projectile damage increased by 15%, so not too bad. And the impulse from the Miller is actually going up here, so not too bad itself. The fact that its damage is going up and they're trying to make it more apparent in battles is kind of interesting. The extra explosive damage, though, that'll be pretty dang nice when it actually comes to dealing damage on weapons. So that's this little bad boy right here. So actually increasing its damage quite significantly, and its explosion will definitely make this a lot more popular, especially in the lower power scores where this thing is just a bit too beefy. But definitely interesting to see how that'll turn out. Basically like the Equalizer here, except probably a bit more fun. Beyond that, we got the Prometheus 5, damage increased by 5% across the board, or 15%, sorry. So, not too bad. Phoenix durability increased by a smidgen, with extra bolt durability increase as well, and now it explodes after 3 instead of 4, which kind of makes sense. To be honest, the Phoenix, kind of a crap tier weapon, probably still gonna be, but hey, at least now it's not gonna get shot off pretty much instantaneously, and it's only able to do some little bit of damage here, which is kind of weird for an epic tier weapon. Not terribly hot, not terribly hot. Beyond that, the Mandrake here, which since a new rocket has been introduced, I can see this coming along here. The minimum spread of the shells has been significantly reduced, slightly reduced the maximum spread of the shells, so a bit more concise, which is kind of funny because that makes Mandrake more in line with the rocket launcher as opposed to itself, because Mandrake is supposed to be like an area of denial thing as opposed to like a pinpoint accuracy, but alright, I guess changing that. Spread now increases from the minimum to the maximum with each subsequent projectile in the burst. So it's tight at first and then loosens when it gets a bit more used, which that did not come out right. And looks like the radius of the puddles is increased by 10%, and the time before the puddle disappears increases by 2%. So they're larger and they take longer to actually fade away. So still a little bit of an area denial effect here, but still with less randomization here. So you should still get a decent amount of damage. Beyond that, now we got the Welp here. The rocket's speed is increased by 16% here, and now get the speed upgrade grants 50% bonus instead of 25%. So, okay, not too bad. Less harder to maneuver, but now it gets less overall speed to begin with. but considering that it still pretty much gets a 1% speed increase since it loses 50% from the bonus, but gains 16, so it's 1% faster now. Yay! And not sufficient damage for legendary rarity. To be fair, a lot of the rockets have been kind of feeling rough ever since they had the changes in explosion, but who knows, maybe I'll change my mind. Next we have the Kami here. Tonnage increased by a little bit here. Mass has been reduced a smidgen, or actually no. Mass has actually been increased a smidgen too, so tonnage really went nowhere. And the power has been increased ever so slightly. Okay. Oh, mass limit, not mass. Okay, so it can haul more while weighing a little bit less with a little bit more power. But it looks like it's not terribly large amount of duration or buff to the cabin itself, so not really going to be able to see it here. And it looks like they changed the power node locations for the master cabin. So, interesting. What does that actually look like nowadays? I really haven't messed around with it too much because I kind of find the gimmick to be a bit, well, gimmicky. But let's take a look. Yep, looks like now we got some 2 on top of the cabin. Quite nice. And we still have some on the side here too. Nice. So we still actually have some available for a lot more build options here. Because where they were currently placed was not as usable. But having stuff on top, it's going to be real nice. And then beyond that, we have some interface, sound, and other changes here that you can go ahead take a look at your own leisure. I'll leave the link to this actual article down below if you want to take a look at it for yourself, which I'm guessing if you've probably seen this video and the fact this thing has been out for a hot second now, you probably already know of it. But you know what? Better late than whatever the fuck that I upload. But either way, guys, I want to thank you all for joining this evening. What do you guys think about this lovely little patch here? Are you a big fan of the football, soccer ball thing where you kick it with your feet thing? Let me know down below, and we'll start talking about it. And by talk about it, ignore you because I do not care about soccer in the slightest. But beyond that, guys, I want to thank you all for joining me this again. And if you love what you have, feel free to follow whatever platform is favorite. We got that YouTube, we got the Twitch, we got the Twitter, and we got that Discord. I would say TikTok, but you know what? I stopped putting that on my phone because I was looking at it way too much, and it was really making me mad looking at it. But beyond that, guys, there's also a subscription to this channel. Get yourself lovely emote badges, all that fun stuff today. But other than that, guys, I want to thank you all for joining me, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.